North Africa, 814 BC. A Phoenician princess named Elissa arrives on the coast of what is now Tunisia with a fleet of ships, a group of followers, and a story that will become legend. She has fled Tyre, the great Phoenician trading city on the Lebanese coast, after her brother Pygmalion murdered her husband to seize his wealth. She carries with her the sacred objects of the Tyrian temples, the loyalty of priests and nobles who chose exile over complicity, and the commercial knowledge of a civilization that has been trading across the Mediterranean for 4 centuries. She negotiates with the Berber king Iarbas for land. He offers her as much land as can be covered by a single ox hide. She cuts the hide into the thinnest possible strips and uses them to encircle a hilltop large enough for a citadel. The story is almost certainly legendary. The commercial ingenuity it encodes is not. The woman who becomes Dido, the founder queen of Carthage, is remembered precisely because the civilization she creates operates by exactly this principle. Find the constraint, find the loophole in the constraint, and build something larger than anyone expected inside it. Carthage, Court Hadasht, in the Phoenician language, the new city, grows from that hilltop into the wealthiest city in the ancient world. It builds a commercial empire that stretches from Spain to Sicily, from Sardinia to the Atlantic coast of Africa. It controls the Western Mediterranean's trade routes with a completeness that no rival approaches for 3 centuries. It produces generals of genius, admirals of extraordinary capability, and a commercial aristocracy whose sophistication rivals anything in Greece or Rome. Then, Rome destroys it, completely, deliberately, and so thoroughly that almost everything Carthage produced, its literature, its administrative records, its religious texts, its history written from its own perspective, is gone. What survives is what Rome chose to preserve, filtered through the accounts of enemies who had reasons to diminish what they had destroyed. This is the story that history forgot to tell. Not the story of Hannibal, that story is known, the story of what Hannibal was fighting to protect. To understand Carthage, it is necessary to understand what it inherits from Phoenicia, because Carthage is not simply a colony that grows large. It is the continuation and eventual surpassing of a commercial tradition that is already one of the most sophisticated in the ancient world. The Phoenicians, inhabitants of the Lebanese coast city-states, are the great commercial intermediaries of the ancient Mediterranean. They build networks through trade, not conquest. Phoenician merchants developed the alphabetic writing system that all Western alphabets derive from, a commercial innovation designed to record transactions more efficiently than the complex scripts of Mesopotamia. Phoenician glass, purple dye, and cedar timber move across 3 continents on the finest ships of the era. The purple dye, Tyrian purple, requires enormous quantities of murex shellfish to produce even small amounts of pigment. The result is a color so vivid and permanent it becomes the exclusive marker of royalty across the ancient world. Roman emperors adopt it. Byzantine emperors restrict it to the imperial family. The phrase "born in the purple" derives from this Phoenician product. Carthage inherits the trade and expands it, controlling Atlantic mollusk sources no Mediterranean competitor can reach. When Tyre falls under Assyrian and Babylonian domination, Carthage, already wealthy and strategically positioned, becomes the center of the Phoenician commercial world. The mother city declines. The colony surpasses it. By 500 BC, Carthage governs a commercial empire. Tyre could not have imagined. Carthage's power is maritime before it is territorial. The city sits at the geographic fulcrum of the Mediterranean, equidistant from Gibraltar in the west and the Aegean in the east, positioned to control the sea lanes connecting the 2 halves of the ancient world's most productive trading zone. The Carthaginian navy enforces commercial exclusivity. Carthaginian warships patrol the western Mediterranean and turn back foreign vessels, attempting to enter the Atlantic or trade with Carthaginian settlements without authorization. The policy is real. Carthage maintains a commercial zone into which competitors are not welcome, backed by the naval force to make the exclusion meaningful. Iberian silver, from the richest mines in the ancient world, flows through Carthaginian networks to eastern Mediterranean markets where silver is the primary currency. Sardinian grain feeds the population. Sicilian olive oil and wine sustain western Mediterranean commerce. African elephant ivory commands extraordinary prices in Greek and Near Eastern luxury markets. West African gold, reached by expeditions navigating past Gibraltar down the Atlantic coast, enters the ancient monetary system through Carthaginian channels. The silent trade on the West African coast is one of the most remarkable commercial practices in antiquity. Carthaginian merchants beach their ships, lay out goods on the sand, retreat to the boats, and light a fire. African traders approach, lay gold beside the displayed goods, and retreat. The Carthaginians examine the gold. If sufficient, they take it and leave. If not, they wait for more. No language is shared, no contract written. The trade works because both sides need it to and because the Carthaginian navy ensures no competitor can offer an alternative. Carthage in 300 BC is a city of perhaps 400,000 people, larger than any city in the western Mediterranean, larger than Rome at the same period, rivaling Alexandria in the east. It occupies a peninsula jutting into the Gulf of Tunis, connected to the mainland by a narrow isthmus that is easily defended and surrounded on three sides by water that Carthaginian warships command completely. The harbors are an engineering achievement as significant as anything in the ancient world. The military harbor, circular, approximately 325 meters in diameter, is designed to shelter 220 warships simultaneously with covered berths for each vessel and a central island housing the admiral's headquarters from which the entire fleet can be directed. The commercial harbor adjoins it, rectangular, open to merchant traffic, with quays and warehouses handling the continuous flow of goods that sustains the city's commercial economy. The two harbors are connected by a channel that allows warships to move between them without entering open water, a design feature that gives Carthage the ability to deploy its fleet without revealing its strength to observers in the commercial harbor. The city itself is organized on principles of commercial efficiency. The Bursa, the original citadel, houses the temples and administrative buildings. Around it spread residential and commercial districts on a grid facilitating movement and trade. The markets are permanent structures rather than seasonal gatherings, a distinction reflecting Carthage's status as a year-round commercial center. The population is ethnically diverse. Phoenician Carthaginians form the ruling aristocracy. Libyans farm the agricultural hinterland and serve in Carthaginian armies. Numidian cavalry provide the mobile striking force that Carthaginian armies depend on. Iberian warriors, Gallic mercenaries, Balearic slingers, all present in a cosmopolitan population that has no parallel in the ancient world outside Alexandria. The government is oligarchic rather than monarchical, a sophisticated republican constitution that Aristotle analyzes and praises as a model of balanced government. Two suffets head the executive. A council of elders provides the deliberative assembly of the commercial aristocracy. A council of 104 judges reviews the conduct of generals and officials. This system prevents the concentration of military power in individual hands, a strength that becomes a fatal weakness when the wars with Rome require sustained commitment regardless of short-term setbacks. A Carthaginian commander who loses a battle can be crucified. The institutional caution this produces makes Carthage strategically careful and strategically slow at precisely the moments when Rome is moving fast. Sicily is the crucible in which Carthaginian imperial strategy is tested across 3 centuries before Rome arrives. The island's agricultural productivity makes it the prize every Mediterranean power covets. The Greeks colonize the eastern 2/3. Carthage controls the western third, anchored by Panormus, modern Palermo, and a network of fortified towns. The wars with the Greek cities of Sicily, Syracuse above all, last from the 6th century to the late 4th century BC, consuming enormous resources without decisive outcome. Carthage repeatedly comes within reach of controlling the entire island, repeatedly loses that advantage to Syracusan resistance or plague or political complications. What these centuries produce is a mercenary army of unmatched quality. The Numidian cavalry are the finest light horsemen in the ancient world. The Iberian infantry fight with ferocity and flexibility. The Balearic slingers lead projectiles with more velocity and accuracy than archers. The war elephants terrify any infantry that has not faced them. The army is expensive. Carthage can afford it because the commercial empire generates revenues no city-state dependent on agricultural taxation can match. The Spanish silver mines alone produce enough to sustain armies that citizen soldier states cannot keep in the field indefinitely. This financial depth is Carthage's greatest military asset, until it faces Rome, whose political system can mobilize comparable resources with a different kind of determination. Carthage does not only trade with what exists, it actively searches for what does not yet exist in the commercial network. New sources, new routes, new commodities that no competitor has yet discovered. The expedition of Hanno the Navigator, conducted in the 5th century BC, is the most extraordinary exploration of the ancient world before the Portuguese age of discovery 2,000 years later. Hanno leads 60 ships past Gibraltar, south along the Atlantic coast of Africa. The surviving Periplus describes founding colonial settlements, encountering crocodiles and hippopotamuses, observing active volcanoes and reaching a place where drums sound in the darkness and fires burn on the shore at night. How far Hanno travels is debated. Estimates range from Sierra Leone to Cameroon. What is not debated is that Carthage is conducting systematic Atlantic exploration of West Africa when Greek and Roman geographical knowledge of the continent extends barely past Morocco. The expedition of Hamilco goes north, reaching the Tin Islands, almost certainly Britain and possibly Ireland. The tin that Bronze Age civilization depended on, and that still commands premium prices, flows through routes Carthage is attempting to control directly. These expeditions are commercial investments, not adventures. The knowledge they generate is kept secret. The deliberately misleading accounts of Atlantic sailing conditions that Carthaginian sailors apparently circulate, describing the ocean as shallow, weedy, and unnavigable, are commercial disinformation, protecting a trade advantage through information control rather than military force. The three Punic Wars, 264 to 241 BC, 218 to 201 BC, 149 to 146 BC, are the most consequential series of conflicts in ancient history and the one whose outcome is most contingent on decisions that could have gone differently. The First Punic War is fought over Sicily and establishes Rome's naval capability through a building program of extraordinary speed. Rome constructs a fleet, copies Carthaginian ship design, and wins naval battles within years of never having fought at sea. The peace strips Carthage of Sicily and imposes an indemnity that strains Carthaginian finances severely. The Second Punic War is Hannibal's war, the subject of a separate story, and comes closer to destroying Rome than any conflict in the Republic's history. The Third Punic War is not a war in any meaningful military sense, it is an execution. By 149 BC, Carthage is no longer a military threat to Rome. The peace terms of 201 BC have stripped it of its navy, its overseas empire, and its right to make war without Roman permission. It is a prosperous commercial city, still wealthy, still trading, still producing the agricultural and commercial output that its North African base enables, but militarily defanged. The Roman Senate's decision to destroy it is driven not by military necessity, but by commercial and political calculation. The phrase Carthago delenda est, Carthage must be destroyed, is attributed to Cato the Elder, who supposedly ended every speech, regardless of subject, with this conclusion. The obsession is not irrational. Carthage's commercial productivity, even without its empire, represents a potential future competitor. Roman commercial interests in the Western Mediterranean do not want a Carthaginian recovery. The merchants and landowners who influence Roman senatorial politics understand that a prosperous Carthage is a commercial rival that time and opportunity might eventually restore to something approaching its former power. The pretext for the Third Punic War is Carthage's defensive war against the Numidian king Massinissa, a Roman client, who has been raiding Carthaginian territory for decades under Roman protection. Carthage fights back, violating the peace terms that prohibit war without Roman consent. Rome declares war. The siege of Carthage lasts 3 years. The city defends itself with desperate ingenuity, producing weapons from whatever materials remain available, fielding armies from its civilian population, using the narrow streets of the city as defensive terrain that slows the Roman advance to a street-by-street, house-by-house attrition. When the final Roman assault comes in 146 BC, the fighting lasts 6 days. The city burns for 17 days afterward. The survivors, perhaps 50,000 of a population that had numbered in the hundreds of thousands, are sold into slavery. The physical city is demolished. The territory becomes the Roman province of Africa. Ancient sources describe the Romans salting the earth to prevent Carthage from ever being rebuilt, a story that modern historians have largely concluded is a later legend rather than a documented practice, but whose persistence reflects the genuine Roman desire for permanent erasure. What is unambiguously true is the cultural destruction. The libraries of Carthage, whose contents we know from Roman references to them, are distributed to Numidian princes or simply lost. The religious texts are gone, the administrative records are gone, the histories that Carthaginian scholars had written of their own civilization are gone. The agricultural manuals, particularly the works of Mago, whose 28-volume treatise on agriculture was considered so valuable that the Roman Senate ordered it translated into Latin immediately after the city's destruction, survive only in fragments quoted by Roman authors. Everything else is silence. What Carthage actually was, its theology, its literature, its internal politics, its self-understanding, is almost entirely inaccessible because the winners wrote the history and the losers' records burned with their city. What survives is fragmentary and filtered. Greek writers who visited Carthage left accounts, but Greeks and Carthaginians were commercial rivals and military enemies throughout the period when these accounts were written. Roman writers describe Carthage primarily in the context of the wars Rome fought against it, as the enemy, the threat, the civilization that produced Hannibal. The Carthaginian voice is absent from its own story. The religious practice of Carthage is the most contested element of its history. Ancient sources describe the Tophet, a sacred precinct where remains of infants and children are found in urns. Roman and Greek writers interpret these as evidence of child sacrifice to Baal, Hammon, and Tanit. Modern scholarship is divided. Some archaeologists argue the Tophet is a cemetery for children who died of natural causes. Others argue the ancient sources are essentially correct. The evidence is ambiguous, and the Carthaginian texts that might resolve it do not exist. What is not ambiguous is that Carthage produced genuine sophistication across every domain civilizations are measured by. Its agricultural science was the most advanced in the ancient world. Its commercial law influenced Roman practice. Its shipbuilding was copied by Rome at the beginning of the First Punic War because it was demonstrably superior. Its harbor engineering, its monetary system, its urban planning, all at the frontier of ancient achievement. The narrative Rome promoted, that Carthage was cruel, treacherous, and religiously extreme, is the narrative of a victor who needed to justify what it had done. It is not history. It is propaganda so successful that it has shaped the Western understanding of Carthage for 2,000 years. The destruction of Carthage is not simply the end of a city. It is the permanent removal of an alternative from the historical record, an alternative model of Mediterranean civilization, organized around commercial sophistication, maritime power, and cosmopolitan urban culture, rather than the territorial expansion and citizen, soldier militarism that Rome represents. What a Mediterranean world in which Carthage survived might have looked like is genuinely unknowable, but the specific things that are lost with it are knowable. The Atlantic exploration program, Hanno's voyages, Himilco's northern expeditions, ends permanently. The direct trade routes to West African gold and British tin, which Carthage was developing and protecting, are abandoned. Western Europe's connection to the broader Mediterranean economy is reorganized on Roman terms that serve Roman agricultural and military interests rather than the commercial network that Carthage had been building. The Berber and North African cultures that Carthage had been integrating into a Western Mediterranean commercial system are now subordinated to Roman provincial administration rather than Carthaginian commercial partnership. The Numidian aristocracy that had provided Hannibal's cavalry and shaped North African politics for centuries is reconfigured as a Roman client structure. The diverse, multilingual, commercially sophisticated world of the Western Mediterranean that Carthage had administered becomes, over the following century, increasingly Roman in language, law, and cultural practice. Carthage itself is eventually rebuilt. Julius Caesar plans a colony on the site. Augustus establishes it, and Roman Carthage becomes one of the most important cities in the empire. But it is a Roman city, organized on Roman principles, serving Roman purposes. The civilization it replaced is gone as completely as the Senate of 146 BC intended. The princess who cut the ox hide into strips and built a citadel on a Tunisian hilltop left behind something that lasted 668 years and stretched from Spain to the Atlantic coast of Africa. It was the first commercial empire of the Western world, built on silver and tin and purple dye and the systematic control of information about where the profitable trade routes ran. Rome called it the enemy. History forgot to ask what it called itself.